Alrighty, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Hate GOP Hour. We'll be starting very, very shortly. But first, introducing our panel to discuss this topic we so love to discuss. Mr. Pete Quinones is back. How are you, Pete?
Oh, I'm doing good. I've been looking forward to doing this for all week. Yeah.
Inside joke. Hilarious. All right. And joining us tonight is Mr. Jeff Younger. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Howdy, thanks for having me. And if there's going to be a Hate the GOP barbecue, thanks for inviting me.
Oh yeah, you're definitely on the short list that we want to invite for such an occasion. So, for those of us or for those in the audience who might not be familiar with your work or where they could find you, why don't you just give a brief introduction about yourself?
Well, the state of Texas, I was one of the first cases where a crazy ass liberal wife tried to transition a boy to a girl. It was my son. His name is James. I fought for 10 years here in Texas and successfully got passed a law to outlaw it here in Texas. Took me 6 years and about 160 grand to buy off the Texas legislature to get that done. The Republican Party fought me every step of the way. So eventually the judge allowed her to move my son to California where these procedures were legal. Then I had a trial in California in one of these clinics. I'm going to shut it down. And I'm along the way, I've learned a lot about how laws are actually made. I've learned a lot about the GOP. I learned a lot about the oligarchic control of the parties and the transnational interests that have been promoting the abuse of children. You can find me at Jeff Younger Show on X, Facebook, and YouTube.
Alrighty. Well, I know it's a very harrowing story, Jeff. I thank you for joining us tonight and telling us about that. But the reason we're having you on is because you have a very in-depth look of how the GOP actually functions and how best we can work with and navigate it, because it is really, unfortunately, we have to work with the tools that we have at our disposal. And unfortunately, the GOP is our best vector to actually fight the left. We got to make do with what we have. But before we get into this topic tonight, most notably about the state of Virginia in the aftermath of the recent gubernatorial election there, we must get through all of the shillings and the sponsorships. So, as always, gentlemen, everyone is currently gripped and stuck inside because of the great ice storm across the United States. But even though we are in the grips of white boy winter, white boy summer will return once again. So head on over to Axios Remote Fitness and Coaching, where you guys can get shredded for next year. The snow will retreat at some point. It always does. So head on over to Axios. In addition to that, you guys can get your caffeine fix with Fox & Sons coffee. Link is down in the description. Stephen Fox & Sons, good friend of the show. Be sure to partake in all of his wares. Now, while you're at it, stick an Alp in your lip, because we here at OGC are fans of big tobacco. Alp nicotine pouches are helping me get through this tax season, and they too can help you get through your trying work days. Link in the description as well. Also, if you guys want to be looking at your absolute sharpest and your best, head on over to MS Vendrillo Suits. Link is in the description. If anyone ever comes to the OGC National Conference every year, you can immediately tell who is wearing a Vendrillo suit and who is not. Those guys look the sharpest out of everybody in the crowd. So head on over there. Link is also down below.
I just got a blazer delivered from the Black Friday sale, 25% off, and it is everybody in the chat agrees it is sharp.
Nice. Yeah, I look forward to getting personally fit for one at this year's national conference. So everyone be sure to peruse his wares on the website. And then finally, our good friend, Mr. George Bagby, in his website, Tall Man Books. So if you want to get your hands on some very nice copies of some books that were out of print for a long time, detailing history of the American, founding, 17th, 18th, 19th, even the 18th century, even to the 20th century. These books were out of print for a very long time. Bagby has done some great work in bringing them back. So be sure to support fellow friends. All right, gentlemen, with the shillings out of the way, we have to talk about Virginia. Now, for everybody has probably known about this at this point, the brief recap of what happened. But, Governor Glenn Youngkin kind of fumbled his way into the governorship during the previous election because of that horrible story of a troon sexually harassing a young girl in a high school bathroom. People remember that correctly. And that broke out just a week before the election. And that kind of actually catapulted him to victory. So I don't really think this guy really actually expected to win. win. But what did he do for his tenure as governor? Well, he did what the GOP always does, unless you're Ron DeSantis, interestingly enough. You do not secure the voting rolls, and you actually don't secure power for the next election. And even worse, Ohio is doing a run of this right now. Looks like Florida might be doing this again, but they didn't have a primary for the governor. And so who did they choose? Well, they choose the Jamaican immigrant Black woman, Winsome Earl Sears, known never Trumper, known complainer about Confederate statues, which I'm sure pulled very well with the white rural vote in a place or in a state as important to the Confederacy as Virginia is. And naturally, she got her shit kicked in by Abigail Spanberger, who came in. And, this is just a perfect example of the things that we talk about on the show all the time, of the worst traits of the GOP. And Jeff here, I'm sure, can tell us quite a bit of what it is like actually dealing with these people who are in power, just, to be the eternal whipping boys of the left and collect their paycheck. And, it's so crazy because when the Democrats campaign, they campaign like, moderates, and then they come in government like Mao. And then the Republicans, they campaign like moderates, and they come in and they govern like Stalin. So it's just horrible. We have like two terrible choices. So, Jeff, I'm sure, or maybe you weren't watching this too closely, but what is your opening opinions on the situation in Virginia? Were you really surprised by this? Were you shocked at all?
No, I mean, the Republican candidate was put there to lose, obviously. No rational person would have thought she had any possibility to win. And the macro analysis is basically this. There's just no such thing as the United States. There's no such thing as the legislature. These are abstractions that don't really exist. What's going on is that there's economic oligarchies that run things, and they compete with one another. And so there's families and organizations and consortia that decide who's going to get what, right? And I can give you some great examples out of Texas, more so than out of Virginia, but the donor class often wants the GOP to lose on issues. And the way it works in Texas is they'll have the GOP do something that seems very conservative, but put loopholes in it so that it doesn't work. That's how we can pass border bill after border bill after border bill, but the border is never secured. It always has loopholes. There's always asylum loopholes or something where people can get in. And that's just because the donor class wants it. I mean, my first introduction to this was when I realized that the transgender movement was started by Republican donors, not by Democrat donors. The largest donor to the Republican Party is a guy named Paul Singer. And if you go out to the conservative think tank, the Manhattan Institute, you can see videos of him talking about why he believes in transgender ideology and why he funds it. He funded the Human Rights Campaign. And that pushed all of this crazy transgender stuff into corporations. And so all of it is designed to look like it's conservative, and, you can just hear the kind of things that were said about the candidate in Virginia. This is a true immigrant success story. This is America's apple pie and all this stuff. But what was really happening is the donors decided that in that state she had to lose. And they needed a loser, and they paid for that, and they got that. And that's how things actually work. So if you want to think through the power, it's really not through the parties. It's through the donor class that you will find how power is really exercised, even in Virginia.
What do you think, Pete?
Well, I think our friend, our brother Jay Burden, has done great work on this as a Virginia resident. I think he had Merrick from the Good Old Boys on. And they're up there. And also he had a talk with Stormy, and they're of the opinion that this was done on purpose.
Yeah.
That basically the GOP is just giving the Virginia a libtard Reich, for 1,000-year libtard Reich, just like they're trying to do in Ohio. There's no other reason in Ohio to run a Jeet than to have people go, I think I'd rather just vote for the white woman. Yeah, she's going to suck. But at least, the governor's mansion isn't going to smell like shit, So it's obvious. I fully agree with the the theory that Stormy and Jay came up with on the fly, that the reason they're imploding the GOP, that there's a certain group that's imploding the GOP, is because they see people who think like we do
Correct.
getting elected, getting appointed, getting jobs
That's
in
right.
the government. And they're like, well, we can't, we'd rather, you know, and this certain group, they go from left to right. They're
Yes.
not, they don't care if they're a Republican or a Democrat. You know, a lot of these, a lot of this group who are on the right now and talking about immigration and talking about Islam,
Right.
these are the same people who were pushing, these are the same people who were pushing transgenderism and
Yes.
and DEI and all of this just a couple of years ago. Then after October 7th, they saw, oh, look at this. The country is noticing that, you know, that we run things.
Right.
And it's like, well, the only thing, they're not going to become Democrats and take over the Democrat Party. The only thing they can do is infiltrate the GOP. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's implode the GOP. And as soon as the GOP is destroyed, we'll become Democrats again.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. And I actually think that was the origin of the lawfare against Trump. You know, Trump was rich enough that he could kind of do whatever he wanted. So they initiated lawfare against Trump, and then they froze all of his bank accounts, and he was forced to take money from donors. And that's how you get Miriam Adelson being his #1 donor. You know, a casino magnate with associations with, you know, organized crime, a person who funded the transgender story hours for kids in libraries across the country. If you wonder who that was, it was Miriam Adelson, Trump's largest donor. And she's the one who is the largest funder of the Republican National Committee. And every single RNC that's broadcast, you'll see a transvestite up on stage. It's the same people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I want to circle back really quickly to this line about, you know, intentionally destroying and crashing the GOP because they see, you know, what they perceive as intruders and interlopers and, you know, people like us, right? You know, getting into positions. I mean, you clearly see this with the attack vector from people like James Lindsay or others. You know, this woke right term, right? It's and it's intentionally used to branch people like, you know, Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, you know, anybody else, all the way up to JD Vance, right? And it's basically a term trying to get the GOP donor class to just completely disavow the actually engaged youth of their party and of their movements. You know, I mean, it's crazy. Like when you go into any of these like GOP meetups or something, we were talking about this just before we came on air, Jeff. It's like, okay, so the GOP treats their young guys who are interested in getting involved with the movement. They say on paper, like, oh, well, it's a bunch of old heads. How come we aren't getting the youth involved in all this stuff? It's like, well, you pay these guys like $10 an hour if it's not just like volunteer work. And we're going to get into this in Virginia, but Virginia is now attempting to pass unlimited taxpayer funding for houses of you know, Democrat workers in the state of Virginia. It's like the GOP will give you $10 an hour. The Democrats will literally buy you a mansion, you know, at the taxpayer's dime. You know, you know, we're talking about Bog Beef earlier, you know, about the good old boys, and the thing those guys are always talking about is client patronage. The Democrats are actually a political machine. They actually know what it means to win, to use power, and to fund their friends and to punish their enemies.
Yeah, I ran for office here in Texas in House District 63. And it's a small, very small House district. It's just the southern half of one county. And the governor and the donor PACs here, which one of them is called Texans for Lawsuit Reform. After a year, when I was able to add up all of the dark money and everything that went into the race, they spent over $4.7 million to keep me out of the Texas House. I mean, in a little race like that, it's just unbelievable, right? But it shows you that they are absolutely terrified of actual right-wing people, right? If you're right-wing and you're willing to say it and you're willing to normalize it, they're absolutely terrified of people like that. And so the principle that they fundamentally can't allow to happen in the Republican Party is organization of those young right-wing men. So when I ran for office, I used my middle name, and I went into Dallas County, which is very liberal, and it's right next to me. And I went to a Democrat meeting, like one of the Democrat clubs, like we have Republican clubs. And it was weird because it was, you go to a Republican club, it's held in the evenings. You'll have a cocktail soiree. You'll get to talk to judges, mayors, and all these people. And then you'll have a talk by a charismatic speaker on some jingoistic subject or whatever. And then everybody goes home, right? That's basically what a Republican club does. It's kind of an raising awareness thing. So I thought it was weird. I was going to this Democrat club meeting in Dallas, and it was held in the middle of the day on a Saturday, which I thought was weird because you can't have a cocktail soiree in the middle of the day. I went in a suit, and I looked pretty out of place because it was actually turned out to be a gymnasium. I walk in, and there's like blue-haired lesbians at a table, and I just walk up to one of them and said, "Hey, my name is Damon, and I used to be a Republican, but the transgender issue really flipped me over to the Democrat Party." And they were just like so pleased, and they, found out a lot about me, talked to me. And then they said, "Well, is that what really interests you?" And I said, "Yes, the transgender." He said, "Great, go into the gymnasium and go to table 6. So literally table 6. I go over there, and there's more blue-haired lesbians there. And they give me this notebook, and they say, "Look, here's the deal. This is a program to get you elected to precinct chair in your county. And if you do the following steps," and there were things like you get 20 people to your house for a meeting, and then you broadcast it online with the Dallas party, they would give you $200 in budget, right? And you start meeting these milestones, and it was just, they gave me this notebook, and it was just a game plan for how to take over my precinct. And they said, if we get enough people that are precinct chairs, we have another game plan for how to take over the entire county. And each step along the way, to the point where you're getting $10,000 a year to run your little organization in your county. Like they don't waste time on cocktail soirees. Like they go there to work and find out what works. I mean, they had it down to phone call scripts, email scripts. If I got 50 people 3 times to meetings, they were going to give me a website, and they would do emails for free inside my precinct. I mean, they were totally organized. And, in the Republican Party, if you look at what precinct chairs get at the county level, they get literally nothing. They got no email. They don't even have a system to notify people of county events in their own party. Okay. And I said, well, okay, I do software engineering. I'll build one. As soon as I started to do that, people came out of the woodwork to stop me. The powers that be in the GOP don't want us to organize like that. They're afraid of us organizing like that. And so that's the difference between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. They organize for power, and we organize for social events.
We organize to feel good. This is like one of the huge issues you run into whenever you're talking to like boomers or something. They think that the entire summary of their political engagement is voting on election day and then occasionally donating money to some like political cause.
Yeah.
Occasionally. That's it. And you totally see this like when you go to these various like GOP events or cocktail hours or stuff like this. It's like, oh, look, guys, we're politically engaging. We're all getting together in one room, and we're all talking about the same thing. This is how you organize. This is how you do it, right? But then like the actual GOP, when they see somebody like you who's actually trying to take initiative and actually do something and actually win, what the voters asked for or whatever. Yeah, they're like, no, sir, you're not supposed to do anything. You're not supposed to win. You're supposed to be here.
The looks that I saw on people's faces in Austin, they were actually terrified. Like I had political consultants calling me from Austin saying that, like, my name is being mentioned in every meeting in the House of Representatives and the Senate. Like everybody's talking about not making sure that I don't win. And the proposal that scared them the most was my proposal to landmine the southern border in Texas. Because I went down to the Texas National Guard down in Harlingen. Yeah. Well, I went down to the Texas National Guard in Harlingen, and I talked to the colonel down there that ran the Combat Engineer Battalion. And I assumed it was similar, like when I was in the Marine Corps. They have similar capabilities. The Texas itself has mine layers, and they can lay a mile of mines every 3 hours. And a mine costs 75 cents. That's what the DoD pays for them, 75 cents. So we could mine the entire Texas border for less than $4 million and completely shut down all illegal egress, force every single person through a legal port of entry. And that is the one that's apparently scared them the most. I'll leave it to your imagination to figure out why that might be.
Yeah, I mean, all the funding would, dry up instantly for, them attempting to solve the problem. It's just,
Or it would stop the kids that they're having sex from getting into the friggin' country.
That's exactly what it would stop.
That too.
It would also stop gun running across the border to the Sinaloa cartel. So there's a lot of stuff that would just be terminated by that. And they were just simply not going to let me do that. I also had an AI regulation bill that would prevent companies from de-anonymizing data of Texas citizens. And that scared the shit out of them too.
I was thinking about this today when I was interacting with a libertarian on Facebook. I was thinking to myself, I know. Sorry, Jeff. I was thinking to myself, they ran a gay guy for president, in 2024. And then I'm thinking, but the GOP is just loaded down with fags.
It is.
I mean, I interviewed an Orthodox priest, Father Lemelson, on the show, and he was taken into court by the FCC. Every single lawyer, every single prosecutor was gay.
Yeah. I've experienced
the woman
that.
It's, I mean, you can't, this could take us off on a tangent, but if you consider this to be a Christian country, and you're asking God to bless the country,
right?
Maybe don't have sodomites be in charge of the country.
Dude, they run everything. They run everything, man. And the reason is we all know how this works, right? They have extremely high, pardon the pun, in-group preferences.
Yeah. They're an organized minority.
They do, yeah. And they're free to organize because they're a protected group, so they can discriminate in their favor legally. It's very easy for them to do that. And so they're just going to beat people who won't affirmatively discriminate for what they want to do. One of the tactics they used in Texas, they accused me of being gay. They accused me of being gay.
Did you ask them why that would be a bad thing?
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Well, back in my libertarian phase, in my misspent youth, when I was 18 years old, I did lead a protest. And I did throw some trash on base into a trash can, and I did get captain's masted for that. Like I got put at hard labor for 6 weeks for that. So I'm a recovering 12-step libertarian. And I have to stand in front of the.
We all are, Jeff. Yeah.
I have to stand in front of the mirror every day and go, men are more free under monarchy. Men are more free under monarchy. I say that 3 times every morning to make sure I don't slip back into my evil ways. But that's what they used against me. They did all kinds of stuff. They went after women I had been with, and it was amazing. Like, they had no limits. They have absolutely no limits. And every single one of the political consultants that I was going up against were gay. And my opponent's chief of staff is gay. And he runs this district now. They're all gay.
Wow. Well, as much as we could talk about what we would like to see happen to these people losing their positions and whatnot, let's circle back to Virginia here. We actually have a summary of so naturally, Governor Spanberger gets into power, of course, after running on her very moderate Democrat platform, which all of us know at this point. I mean, are there any moderate Democrats? No.
No.
But so this comes from Lee the Greater here. So the Democrat Party has been back in power in Virginia for 48 hours now. And in this time, they have published legislation to make it illegal to hand count votes, robo-count only, screen public school kids for conservative beliefs, allow the killing of babies up into the day of birth, reduce or eliminate penalties for theft or robbery, launch a massive home daycare grant program, literally the same shit that's going on with the Somalis in Minnesota right now, prohibit telling a jury about a defendant's prior convictions, allow mail-in voting by incapacitated persons, ban shooting
Wow.
firearms on personal property less than 5 acres, raise taxes on basically everything, allowed for property tax exemptions for federal employees affected by the Trump firings, massive increases in gun restrictions, uncapped grants for government employees to purchase homes with. There you go. And that's just some of it. There's even more expansive lists than this out there.
You have to admire them. I mean, this is the thing, man. It's having gone into electoral battles with them, and I've been doing this since the late '80s. I admire our enemies. I mean, they use power when they get in, and they'll probably get every single one of those bills. They'll get every one of them passed.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, they're full lockstep now with the judiciary, the legislature. They have majorities in everything. The only ones they might not get passed are the ones that are forced to be on the ballot, like the abortion one. But, even then, it's just it's like, what does it even matter, like, voting at this point? If you just have illegal hand counts, it could be robotic only, mail-in ballots all over the place. I mean, they're just securing the bag. They get into power, and the first thing they do is like, okay, we're going to make it easier for us to win next time. That's it.
I mean, if these things pass, and you're a right winger, your best bet is just to join the Democratic Party and try to subvert it. That's the best you'll get.
I mean, this is Bolshevism. I mean, this is exactly what they did. They did when they took over, when they destroyed Russia in 1917.
Yeah.
I mean, Lenin famously, the first law that Lenin laid out? You're not allowed to speak poorly about this group of people or else you get shot.
Right.
And then they took over, and I mean, this is just a list of modern day Bolshevism. So,
the thing that really needs to be stressed here, among everything else, right, is that it is the GOP that did this. Okay.
Yes, it was.
The blame is solely on those people. You saw all kinds of the normal characters who are immediately backpedaling, saying, oh, well, look what happened here. This is because the Republican Party has become too radical, and we scared off the natural conservative voters like the Indians and the blacks and the Mexicans and everybody else, and this is why we lost this election. We just need to go back to the center. Trump has become too radical, and this is why we lost. Nick Fuentes is the reason why we lost this election. The dangerous woke right and those scary young guys who want to get involved in GOP politics, you can't trust any of them. They're way too radical. They're losing elections. This is why. And it's like, well, if you guys have been spending the last 8 months prior to this disavowing literally everybody who was talking to Tucker Carlson or what have you, you didn't want us in the party anyway. So even if that was the case, that, the people who listen to shows like this and many others were the deciding votes in this one, and it wasn't the fact that you put up the worst candidate possible in the state, and that's why you lost, right? It couldn't possibly have anything to do with you guys. It has to be, the scary woke right online people or what have you, right? But even if it was the case that those were the votes that swung the election or whatever, you didn't want them there in the first place. So you get what you deserve.
Yeah. I mean, this idea, and it works though. The thing, one of the enduring facts that I've learned over the last 30 years is that conservatives have certain psychological dispositions that make them extremely vulnerable to enemy propaganda. And one of the things is this idea that you're just too radical and you're disturbing the social order by just going too far. Conservatives really are willing to just step back.
Oh yeah, abortion up until the moment of birth isn't radical.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I love it, and when I talk to abortion advocates here in Texas to point out how even we are way more radical on abortion than even Europe, right? The idea of abortion just before birth in Europe is so barbaric, but America is just, but this happens because our guys desire social order so much that they're willing to step back and think about compromise, and they don't want people in the streets, and if they're uncomfortable with direct conflict, things like that. And it's something that the boomers, I think, brought into the party, and then the boomers themselves were groomed by elites in the GOP into this kind of country club chamber of commerce way of thinking about politics. And it's a kind of a politics where you don't want confrontation, you know? And because of that, all the left has to do is create opportunities for disruption and confrontation. And then our guys will just go, yeah, maybe we did go too far. Let's wait a little bit. Let's talk about this. And they'll just fall for it every single time.
I mean,
and
this
is why the future is with
right
young men. Yeah, the future is with young right-wing men. It's not with boomers, and it's not with Gen Xers like me. It's with the young right-wing men who need to seize power in the parties and rule.
100%. I mean, enough of these guys, whether of the young guys I'm referring to, enough of them have either been, raised in the system to the point where they just see the flaws and the cracks and the fact that they've been discriminated against through things like DEI or what have you, been nagged by school marms from school, like since the moment that they were born, told like that men were the root of all evil or what have you. And then some of them have actually studied the root of this kind of stuff and understand the tactics and the propaganda that the enemy like lays these traps for them or whatever. Yeah. And enough of them are just saying, fuck it, I've had enough. I'm done with this shit. We are going to destroy this system. If the GOP has to be destroyed in the process, we're totally fine with that. I mean, I don't think there's a single person who listens to the show. There certainly isn't a single person in the, the Central Committee of the OGC who thinks that like the GOP is like a thing worth saving or whatever. Like, I don't care. I'll use this as a tool if it's effective for me. But we're not like, wedded to the idea of like, oh, a big part of our identity comes from being a Republican. You see this a lot, like with boomers.
Yes.
It's like, being a Republican itself in opposition to being a Democrat, as such, is a huge part of their identity. It's like, well, you get this all the time when you talk to boomers too. It's like when you bring up the actual structural problems with like the economy of the United States, referring to something like the housing market or something, they're like, well, you sound like a Democrat. It's like, dude, what? Like, what the fuck? what kind of response is that?
It's very similar to the idea of facts being racist, right? Some facts are just left wing, right? That's the way they think.
I saw a friend of mine posted up about the 1984 election on Facebook and pointed out that Reagan won 49 states. And I commented, I said, Reagan won 49 states in a country that was still 80% white.
Correct.
Yeah, 100%.
And every boomer melted the fuck down.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if you have an NRA logo as your avatar, I mean, I don't know what to do with you. But they're all just argue. They're all just. How could you say that? Both candidates were white. There were white people who voted Democrat. They don't fucking get it. They don't fucking get it. Yeah. You just have to ignore them. They're not going to get it. They have been trained to be race traders.
They have been, yeah.
You click on their account and you look at it's like, oh, married to Jennifer Lee, LLI. Oh, okay, that's all I need to know. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's like, I mean, these people are fucking useless. They see,
they are.
Well, actually, they're even worse than useless because they're actually doing the work for the enemy. It'd be one thing if they were just useless, sitting on the sidelines and not doing anything. But unfortunately, these people are in control of the levers of power in the GOP, and more importantly, like the actual money of the Republican donor base and the actual, Republican voters as well. It's like these are the people who get the money. These are the people who get the donations, and it's all locked up in the most like retarded programs backing like the worst candidates in the world as well. And it's like, no wonder we lose.
Yeah, no question about it. I did a little experiment last year. It lasted almost the entire year before I couldn't stomach it anymore. I would go to this Thursday breakfast meeting, and it was all boomer Republicans in my county. And these are people who are lifelong Republican activists in Denton County, where I live. And I would just bring up things. I would just say, do you guys think that, an all black city can be ruled by the same laws as an all white city? And the looks on their faces, the horrifically uncomfortable silence, the constipated looks, I felt like I should bring adult diapers to these breakfasts for these poor guys. I would ask, things like about Israel, just like, you say that Iran's done lots of terrorist attacks to the United States, but most have been against Israel. Why do you feel like that's against the United States? They would just drive them crazy. They would go absolutely crazy. When I finally go ahead.
The only reason to bring adult diapers to that is because they have prolapsed colons from being fucked in the ass by their enemy their whole lives, and they love it.
Their whole life. They're just completely, I even got really specific at times. I would say, look, if you have a population with a 15-point lower IQ than the mean IQ in the United States, do you think that you can have the same laws and you can police them the same way? Do you think with lower IQ populations, flogging might be a better deterrent than imprisonment? And they would just completely lose their minds. But when I finally lost patience with them I successfully, it took me about 10 years to do this. Maybe you could say 9, because I really didn't put any money into it until about 9 years ago. But I finally got a constitutional amendment here in Texas, which enshrines parental rights as a fundamental right under the Texas Constitution, because you can't get into federal court out of family courts in the states. So we're going to have to go state by state and do this kind of thing. And this overrules all of the previous precedent in this state, by the way. This completely overturns it because now what they're going to have to do is since it's a fundamental liberty interest, they're going to have to show that there's a compelling state interest to invade a parent's rights for anything from now on. So all of the Republicans at this breakfast were opposed to this amendment because the propaganda came down from the Republican establishment in Texas. And that what they said was, well, this seems like the government's granting you your parental rights, but it's a God-given right. So we shouldn't put this amendment in.
For God's sake, they're just losers.
And it worked.
No.
It worked. We almost didn't get it passed. It almost worked. Every single one of the persons at this breakfast fell for that propaganda. And I'm like, dude, I just don't have patience for this anymore. It's been an interesting experiment. But like I learned, like they can't understand international politics. I'm an offensive realist, the John Mearsheimer offensive realist kind of guy. They can't understand that. They moralize about everything international. They can't understand the actual money system and how money's actually created and what taxation really is. They can't get their head around it. They just live in a completely fabricated world, very similar to the way the left lives in a simulation, The difference is, I got to tell you, man, I could find no evidence or rhetorical technique that could shake them of their irrational beliefs. I think we just have to wait till they die. That's why I say the future is with young men.
Unfortunately, there's probably a lot of truth to that latter statement there for sure. I mean, conservatives have suffered greatly from the propaganda arm of the left for the last, pick your 6 decades and onwards. Even you can even say 100 years, right? And it's amazing when you talk to these people because they have no sense of their own lore aside from what has been created for them by their enemies. And also, their enemies are running Fox News, by the way, which all these people have plugged in and are watching every single day. They think this is like this little alcove for themselves that they have. Right. It's like, oh, really? The real truth is only coming from Fox News. It's the #1 news organization in the entire world or whatever. It's like, listen here, if Fox News was an actual threat to the establishment government of the United States, it would have been destroyed like forever ago. It exists there because it keeps these people on a little plantation where they could think that they're fighting the good fight because I listen to Mark Levin. He's got the real news coming down. Everybody else is watching MSNBC. It's literally like, the Yankees versus the Red Sox. It is.
And it's very difficult for me having, look, I come from a professional background where I build things that have to work. My stuff has to work. People die if my stuff doesn't work. When I had to deal with the political and court systems, what I have to do has to work or my son's going to die. They're going to literally cut his balls off if it doesn't work. These people don't seem to have any care for whether things work or not. One of the questions I asked this little group as my control experiment I said, you know, you've been in this county for 30 years and you've been fighting the liberal establishment for 30 years, longer than I've lived here. I said, what are you going to do differently this electoral cycle? And the answer came back the exact same thing they've done for 30 years. They have no ideas. There's no way for them to step out of the current electoral way of doing electoral politics. I got a guy elected to office here in Texas. I'll give you an example of kind of thinking out of the box. We have a problem with crossover voting in Texas. So our liberal Republican establishment makes sure that we have open primaries. So when they get a conservative candidate like me, they use character attacks, like saying I was gay and that, you know, I'd been in a lot of, and I have been in a lot of fights, you know, so they said he's violent and all this stuff. And then that scares away on moral issues some of the Republican voters. And then they bring in Democrat crossover voters to make up the difference. And that way they can elect their candidate. And that's a tactic that's been used in Texas since 1994. So what I did is, there's a guy I wanted to get elected because he was a key vote for my transgender bill. And so I actually paid to advertise to Democrat voters in his district to make the other candidates seem like the conservative. And I targeted Democrat households to suppress the Democrat vote. You see what I mean?
Mm.
And when I brought this up and said, hey, we could do something like this here in my county, in Denton County, they were like, what? You got, like, it just completely blew their mind, because they said, you lied. Jeff, you lied. And I said, yeah, but it was a noble lie. You know, I mean, but they can't say something about their opponents that might not be true. They're not willing to conceive of the game as propaganda and counter propaganda. And there's just nothing you can do with them. Whereas young men have an instinctive sense of propaganda. They have an instinctive sense.
Yeah, we've lived it our whole lives.
Lived it.
Yeah. It's just in everything we consume: the media, the video games, our schools, our teachers, you know, the women that we have to date. It's literally everything.
Oh, don't even get started on women, man. I get in trouble all the time with conservatives because, I mean, at this point,
the boomers just love putting a woman in fucking everything, don't they?
Oh, they do. They do. And you know, I don't tell young men anything that I wouldn't tell my sons. And I can't tell my sons to get married under these laws, man. You know, fathers really in this system don't have any rights to their children. And it's very difficult. So I criticize this kind of stuff, and man, do conservatives go crazy over that. If anything, I'm hated for the most amongst some of the traditional conservatives, it's that issue around women. And I get asked this all the time. Sounds like you're blaming the women, Jeff. I'm like, yeah, I'm blaming the women. Sure. Of course I'm blaming the women. You know, and there's a long history of blaming the women going back to Genesis 1:12, you know, like, so, yeah, I don't feel bad about it, but, you know, I just point out, like, you know, for example, in divorce, every single child would have equal access to their father if the mother simply allowed it in court. Right? They're not. If you have an agreement between the two parties, in most states, the state has to accept it. But the women don't want that. They don't want fathers involved in their children's lives, and it's destroyed young men. And I was at a church one time. I'm Orthodox, but I was sort of at a revival. I had to attend it as a political function, kind of a revival tent meeting type thing, and it was just fascinating to watch the pastor try to convince these young men that they should get married early. But all these young men were telling me afterwards, like, I've seen what happened to my dad. I'm not doing that. My father lived out of a car, you know?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, you know, people can criticize quite a bit of the manosphere, and there's plenty of disagreement to go around these days, especially with the chief voices in the space, and how let's just call it ethnic-fied. It has been over the last couple of years, but there is a lot of old wisdom and a lot of those old the original OG posters, and that's kind of
there's no doubt. Mm-hmm. But you know, we talk about the structural problems in the economy. There are structural social problems like that in this country, where most young men are being raised without their fathers, and so, you know, they get into their 20s and they essentially look for surrogate fathers. You know, people who can, you know, give them the kind of enculturation that they didn't get as young men. You know, I was very lucky to get that. I grew up on a farm and a ranch where, like, we had a television, but you know, it was on an aerial. We had 2 stations, and we could get them only about 4 nights a week. You know, the weather would prevent us from even getting television. So I grew up around men as a very young boy, and I didn't have a lot of propaganda influence from radio and television when I was young. But these young men have kind of had the opposite, you know.
Yeah, the reverse is what they would say today. Is like, no, your propaganda, Jeff, was toxic masculinity. You know,
right,
we got to get rid
absolutely.
of that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. I mean, this is the thing, you know. Some guy punched me in the mouth. I don't know. This is about a year ago. Some guy punched me in the mouth or something. It was an Antifa guy up in Denton, Texas. I forgot what I called somebody a faggot or something, and punched me in the mouth. So, you know, I kicked him in the balls. And everybody around me, all the women that know me, the Republican women, were just horrified by this, that I kicked this guy in the balls.
Oh, you saw this. Do you
like,
remember the clip?
Me to do? I'm supposed to just take a punch in the mouth, and they actually would have. They would have just taken it.
Do you remember there was this very famous clip? It was just a day or two after Charlie Kirk got killed. There was some leftist, agitator that showed up to one of these vigils and immediately started, starting shit with people, like moving people's bikes around or what have you. And some good old boy comes over and just socks him right in the face. And the first person to get involved and intervene is some overweight, like Marmy kind of like woman or something. It's like, stop it.
Look, come on. We know that if we just go back to following the Constitution, everything will be fine.
Right.
We just need the Constitution. I have a buddy. I believe he's in his early 70s now, but he worked on the Hill.
Okay.
Back in the 80s.
Wow.
And he said people think that the Constitution is this because they read the Bill of Rights that it limits the power of government. He goes, everything that they do is constitutional. Everything they do is constitutional. He goes, anybody screaming in the Constitution just isn't paying attention. And then you bring up Carl Schmitt, he was sovereign decides the exception, and you start talking about politics as a religion, and you have the classical liberals and the lol cows coming out and being like, oh you just want Nazi Germany. It's like, well, there was only one group went up against this power and won. And it took the whole fucking world declaring war on them.
Yeah.
Because they defeated the power. They said Germany is for Germans. And
what a radical idea.
Said, yeah, Germany is for Germans. And it was, it's funny and then you look and you're like, oh, well, obviously someone like Goebbels was Sicilian. I mean, as a Sicilian, right. But he was German.
Right.
I mean, it's people don't realize that, like, you're going to, the libertarians, oh, you're just living like a slave. Look, you're a bootlicker. You're rooting for ICE, and there was this great, there was a great tweet that somebody put out today that, I'm going to find real quick and read it. He said, government agents are going out in the freezing cold and deporting and shooting my political enemies in the street, literally enacting my will while I'm at home on the couch with my feet up, and somehow that makes me a bootlicker. He said, nigga, they're my boots. Those people out there are my boots.
That is fabulous. That's a fabulous quote.
Yeah, very good.
But the Constitution worship is so bad precisely because it interrupts the blood and soil nationalism that is the cure for all this, right?
100%.
Yeah, it is. At least in the boomer mind, that is the fundamental problem. And I have found with libertarians, they're almost as bad as the boomers. You try to you go, have you read Hans Hermann Holpe's, Democracy, the God That Failed? Have you seen his views that you're freer under monarchy than you are under, democratic states that are not anarchic? and you're never going to get your anarchic state. And by the way, there's no libertarian path to a libertarian state. So you're going to have to seize power in an authoritarian coup in order to get it anyway. And they also can't conceive of that, right? So, and all of that just blocks the solidarity. And this is the strength of the propaganda that we're up against. If you believe the Yuri Bezmenov guy from the 70s, he said they were only able to break this kind of Bolshevik conditioning through physical torture, that arguments, proof, evidence wouldn't do it. So I think there's something to people having to face down street fighting, legit street fighting, and at least being exposed to that, because it actually might change people's minds. And as far as Antifa goes, dude, I was having fights with those guys in Houston, Texas back in the 80s. When I moved to the UK and lived there, they were all over the UK in the late 80s. And they would try to take control of, like, tube stations, and you'd have to get into fights with them all the time. They're a highly effective, highly organized, low intensity terrorist organization. And our guys are right. Like, if you get upset about the government opposing somebody like that, you're really, at that point, you're just incapable of solidarity with your fellow citizens. And I don't know what we should do with those people.
And, what we're talking about here is just the fundamental problem with conservatism, or Conservatism Inc. as a whole, right? Is that they are basically generals fighting on the line where every last scrap of their intel, whether it relates to the nature of the enemy, the nature of the terrain, the nature of their own resources, the nature of the weapons being used, all of it is formed by their enemies. All of it. They have no self-conception for themselves whatsoever. At all. It's all propaganda 100% of the way down. And this is why they just always lose. And really crucially for people like us to understand, as always, is that conservatives are the enemy. Drill this into your skull. Conservatives are the enemy. Conservatives 100%. Are the enemy every single time.
There's one other group that I would say, Pete, that achieved much more limited goals, but they did achieve 100% of their stated political goals through nationalistic mobilization. And that was the IRA. And they did that under conditions of maximum surveillance, the maximum technologically available surveillance, satellites, hidden cameras, everything was used against them, and they still succeeded.
In a European country, no less.
In a European country. Yeah. And I think there's some things to be learned there as well. About what kind of propaganda provokes that kind of solidarity. I'm glad we're having a discussion about propaganda, because most of the time, even with right-wing people, it's framed as education. It's framed in an academic way rather than countering the messaging of the enemy.
Yeah, I mean, narrative is all that matters.
Yeah, that's right.
He who controls the narrative has power. People say money is power. No, money used properly can be power, but power is power. Somebody who can wield power without money. Maybe not in this system, but that's the way it really should. But the point is that anybody who is still holding on to ideals, somebody was like, well, you don't even have an ideology anymore. So I'm like, my ideology is whatever it takes to make sure my people are safe.
Exactly. For my friends, everything. For my enemies, nothing. That's all I need.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it.
To put it in Marine Corps terms, no better friend and no worse enemy. You're right. And we should be thinking pragmatically like that. Like, what steps can we take? Like, I was talking to your Black Prairie group, and one of the things I was like, what steps can we take to start funneling money from the county commissioners' courts into projects that we think should be funded? What is it going to take for us to do that? Who has to say yes? Who do we have to influence? Who do we have to propagandize to make that happen? And that kind of talk is just rarely done. That kind of thinking is just rarely done in these groups. Maybe the first time I've ever been on a podcast where people talk about it, actually, and talk about it competently, actually.
Well, we've taken this program, you know, myself and RedHawk are usually on here with a guest, another OGC member. And we catch a lot of crap because it's like, you know, we complain. We say the regime, you know, the administration is not doing enough.
Right.
And people want us to basically get up here and cheerlead and put ourselves and put our reputations out on the line. Well, how about some fucking patronage?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
How about some fucking money?
And
You know, how about we don't have to worry about bills? How about we have our own
Right.
think tanks? How about we, you know, I mean, you have 65 IQ motherfuckers in Minneapolis in fucking houses 3 times the size of the one I live in.
Yes.
And they didn't work a dime for it.
Nope, given to
It is
them.
political patronage. And you got nothing for us who are out here saying things that put fucking targets on our back. Go fuck yourself. If you think I'm going to back you, I'm going to just be like, oh, Donald Trump did this. Yay. Yeah.
And they
Oh,
fucking do it for
you.
free. They fucking do it for free. That's what's even worse. They do it for free and they do it for the fifis.
You're exactly right. And listen, this is the clearest example that the patronage networks in the Republican Party are not right wing, because they're not going to fund you. They are not going to help you, right? There are some places you might go. I know, Peter Thiel has put some money into some things. This new oligarchy that's rising up might do something like that. But I know Elon Musk, when he came to Texas, the first thing he did is he funded the Liberal Establishment PAC, made the largest donation to them they've ever had. So, you're exactly right. I think, Pete, what we're going to have to do is kind of like what Garibaldi had to do, is we are probably going to have to rely on foreign patronage networks. And that's exactly what the IRA had to rely on. And most of that patronage came from the United States for the IRA.
The simple thing that it really comes down to is we really have to start treating the kind of stuff that we do. We here at the OGC, I mean, the most important thing for us to be doing is to keep money within our own network, within our own organization, doing stuff for our guys, for our own people. Well, you can't be giving yourself freely away for the GOP, which is an organization that literally hates you. It is entirely captured by your enemies, basically. I mean, if you guys want to go in and use it as a vector for power, more power to you. And I even think there's some merit to be doing that. But don't be fucking doing it for free, man. Have a goal.
100% right. And have you guys studied like how other ethnicities sort of handle patronage and stuff? For example, I had a business and I lived in Hong Kong for 4 years. And, when Chinese go to a foreign country, like maybe they go to Indonesia or they come to the United States, every Chinese name can be traced back to 5 original Chinese names. One of them is Hung, for example. I know Hung very well because I knew the Hung Family Association. So you come in from China and your name traces back to Hung. You go to the Hung Family Association, and the Hung Family Association is a consortium of businessmen who have what amounts to an illegal and private bank. And they'll loan you money. They'll give you $1 million to start a business, right? And you never have to repay that loan. The only rule is within 30 years, you have to give $1 million to some other Chinese person whose name is Hung. That's how you pay it back. And they cooperate through what amount to private banking institutions. And they create even private investment houses. Any Chinese person anywhere in the world can go to those associations and do that. When I had a business in Hong Kong, I actually had to pay the Tongs. Those are the family organizations. I had to pay them for protection money because organized crime is actually considered by the Southern Chinese to be a social good. Because when the Manchurians would get overly oppressive in the South, it was organized crime guys that would raise private armies and fight them off. So the Southern Chinese see paying the Tongs organized crime as a kind of tax for a check and balance on the government. And I actually had to use them one time to enforce a contract because the guy actually wouldn't pay me. And he paid me that day. When I went to the Tong, he was there literally at my doorstep with cash. But like that model of organizing, almost like in Texas, we have a thing called a family bank. We have rules that allow people to form pools of assets that are not taxed and are eligible for all kinds of tax relief, even when they leave this type of business organization. And it was designed to let farmers and ranchers pass on their. This is the kind of practical, hands-on stuff that needs to be done, right? If we're not getting patronage, we can either, in America, we can get it from foreigners, and lots of groups have gained political power in countries through foreign patronage, or you can do what the Chinese have done, I think, very effectively, which is figured out how to pool resources among a lot of small businesses and use it for massive political power in the places. I mean, basically in Malaysia, the Chinese basically run everything. They run everything. Same is true in large parts of Indonesia and the Philippines. And it's because of this way that they pool resources and the solidarity that they have. And that might be a good model to explore. You know, I'm very practical, man. I'm about getting shit done. I'm not about just complaining. I'm about
100%.
What can we do?
That would be important things that we need.
Yeah, that would be a good case study that you could look at for some good ideas.
Well, you know what's interesting about this discussion right here is that you'll never get this from anybody in any level of like GOP, like local governance whatsoever. No. None of them. No, and I'm all for a great diversity of tactics, and we have to have a diversity of tactics because people like us literally have to rebuild the thing from the ground up because the current thing that we don't have is just not reformable. It is not reformable. And look, what I'm talking about is the same patronage networks that used to be the case that William F. Buckley was a part of. They used to call them country club Republicans, right? It was an informal group of people that pooled resources and did deals together, right? And that's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of thing when you can get that going, you can start making a difference because you have enough money to support programs like this, to support legitimate counter propaganda efforts, and so forth. 100%. I mean, people really just need to get into the mindset that just give your friends money, man. Like, go out of your way to actually engage in patronage with your friends first, and then move out from there. You know, like the GOP is not a friend, guys. It's not. You know, like they see us as too radical. They see us as interlopers. They see us as infiltrators. They would love to snuff all of us out. If some of you guys can, leverage your local GOP and maybe get yourselves into some semblance of power and start hiring our own guys, more power to you. Great. I'm all for a diversity of tactics, but people really need to start focusing more on the local stuff, like literally from the ground up and starting this. I mean, it's just the only way. We can't be having these grandiose ideas of, everybody's just going to magically, come to our line of thinking when the boomers die. It's like, no, we actually need to be the ones who are in a position to take up those reins when they're finally pulled from their cold, dead hands.
That's right. That's right. I mean, like one of the biggest problems in most states is that at the grassroots level, the school districts are the largest employers in the counties. And so they have an inordinate say over politics in the counties because the teachers are going to vote for whatever's good for the schools, which is invariably far left, right? So you go to Republican soirees, in your local Republican club, they're not going to talk about how to overcome that problem. They're not going to deal with it in any realistic way. So you're going to need the money that's required to have you got to have a new Republican club. I would call it something like right-wing Republican club or something like that, right? And you're going to have to create alternative institutions within the Republican Party. And you're going to have to become an institution that can deliver votes to candidates so that you can get concessions from them. And if you don't want to shoot people, then political power in our system comes from only three sources. You can remove someone from office, you can put someone into office, which basically means removing someone, right? Or it means you can get an administrative judge in one of the agencies to see things your way. That's basically all you got, right? So in order to do that, you have to be able to bring donor money to the table, and you have to be able to influence candidates through that donor money. And you have to be able to bring votes to the table and influence candidates with those votes. And right now, it's easy pickings. Everywhere I go, the Republican clubs are extraordinarily weak. They're geriatric. They can't even get, in my county, we can't even get volunteers to hand count votes because everybody's so old. They don't want to spend 6 hours sitting in a chair.
God forbid they pay some young guy, $30 an hour to go and do it.
Yeah. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to, again, create something like, you're going to have to pool resources and pay people to go do it. When I ran my campaign here in Texas, I had 3 top legitimate right-wing guys that were on my staff. And I trusted all 3 of them. I tested every one of them and found that I could trust them. And one has gone on to work at a major media outlet. One is highly placed at TPUSA, actually. And another runs one of the largest political PACs, conservative political PACs in Texas. And that was just off my campaign. And that was me getting them in the right place, meeting the right people, pooling resources with people that I know to get that done, right? So this can be done. And it's a huge opening because the geriatric boomers are losing control of themselves. They can't actually do the work to run the parties anymore. So I would encourage young men in all the states to create an alternative, quote, Republican club. That's what we call them. I don't know why. An alternative Republican club, and create an alternative mechanism to fund money and votes to candidates, and see if you can get them to bend to your will.
Why don't you talk to us, Jeff, on some of the tactics and success you've had getting your bill passed in Texas with influencing various Republican politicians or donors or what have you?
So, I was in an unusual position with my bill. My bill is basically outlawing the castration of kids, right? So it's just there's no moral case against it, right? And yet I found myself sitting in a senator's office having a 30-minute conversation, basically trying to convince this fool that it was something that we needed to outlaw. And so I'm just not going to do that anymore. And kind of the way the catchphrase I had in my mind was, I'm not going to look for the means of persuasion anymore. I'm looking for the means of coercion. And so I sat down and thought through what are the centers of gravity for these elected officials, right? What they really need is money to get reelected. They really value their reputation, because if their reputation's hit, they can get unelected. And they tremendously want to appear to align with ideologies of the counties the districts that they serve. They don't want to get too out of step with that. So really, you could really collapse that into reputation. So you've basically got money and reputation. And so I just started going after people. If they wouldn't vote for my bill, I would destroy their reputation. I would get donors. I would go to church with the children of major donors and tell them what this guy was doing. And the next thing you know, the donor pulls money. I would influence I couldn't get access to these donors, these billionaires. So I get access to their children and change their opinion. Because again, I conceived of it as a propaganda project. And then I had one guy on a committee. This is in the House, Texas House. He just wouldn't budge. So I went to one of his donors. Excuse me, I'm coughing a little bit. And this guy ran banks up in the panhandle of Texas. And I showed up for an appointment, and he didn't know what I was going to talk about. He thought it was business. Then I told him what it was, and he tried to throw me out of his office. We're on the second floor of his bank, one of his banks. and I had him look outside the window. And I had ringed his bank at every entrance to his bank. I had people standing there with flyers that had the banker's face superimposed on a rancher that was castrating a bull. And I had his name, and it said, "This man castrates little kids." And then I had flyers from rival banks that would give free checking if you'd free interest for a year if you'd switch checking accounts to their bank. And I started pulling depositors out of his bank. And I said, "This is going to happen like all year until your bank is gone. You're not going to get away with doing this. Everybody's going to know that you're supporting a candidate that wants to castrate kids." And there's a billboard right outside. I said, "I already have an option on the billboard to put that same thing that's on that flyer to put up on that billboard." And then I went around to all the gas stations and told him what was going on, and he couldn't buy gas in his own county. He had to drive out of the county to get gas for his car. So that didn't last 2 weeks, and my bill got through the House committee and it passed. It actually passed on the floor. So it's those kind of tactics that our enemies play on us all the time. I don't know why we don't just think to do it back to them. You know, these people really fear losing their businesses and losing their reputation. And frankly, it's very easy to attack someone's reputation when they're doing dumb shit like that. Like somebody that actually doesn't want us to throw pedophile, illegal aliens out of the country. It's pretty easy to damage their reputation. And so but you know, that required money. I've spent about $2.5 million trying to get this thing passed and then trying to protect my son. So I spent millions of dollars on this. You do need money to do this kind of thing, but it's very doable at a small scale. I'll tell you another thing that didn't take me any money. We have counties in Texas, out in West Texas, that have less than 1,000 people in them. So if I can change 200 votes in that county in an election, I can flip a Senate seat in Texas. And so I went there and just took pictures of what they were, you know, here's my son in a dress with the court-ordered psychologist. Look what they did to him. These guys went up to their trucks. They were getting guns like they were going to go kill people. You know, the sheriff had to show up and say, "Put your guns away." You know, like this is a political issue, you know. And this scared the senators to death that they passed my bill before it even came from the House. It was already pre-passed. They were just scared to death I was going to flip seats. So there are all kinds of vulnerabilities in the system that these guys nobody's really exploited. Nobody's ever thought to exploit. I don't know why. But like you have low population counties, you can get things done there that you couldn't get done in urban centers. And you know, these counties have outsized influence because we don't have an electoral college for counties, right? So if you have counties in Ohio or you have counties in Virginia or whatever, they all have an equal say then in the district voting. So there's all kinds of ways you can think about how to exercise power. And sometimes having low numbers, like in those counties, can be an advantage, not a disadvantage.
Those are all amazing tips and speaks to the great need for a diversity of tactics. And, you know, just try out the same ones that our enemies
don't convince these assholes. Yeah. Right? They know what they're doing to America. These motherfuckers know what they're doing to America. Okay? They know what they're doing to our people. They know exactly what they're doing. So trying to convince them is just foolish. You got to force them. You got to make it where they just can't do it. And it's surprisingly easy. And I'll tell you, sometimes it's easier just to buy stuff. Like I found that if you want to buy a senator in a state, I've done this in 5 states, you can basically buy a state senator for about $30,000. You can get a vote. You know, I would say 15 to 20 for a representative.
It's amazing how little they take.
Yeah, it doesn't take much money at all.
Like just how little self-respect that they have. You know?
No, it's amazing. I know a very influential organization here in Texas who endorsed a liberal candidate for attorney general. We have an open race for attorney general, and he spent $40,000 for that. It's cheap. It's absolutely dirt cheap. Sometimes it's, you know, it's a business question. Sometimes it's cheaper to buy it than to fight it.
But you're talking about corruption, Jeff. We can't do that. You know, we don't want to cheat to win.
Lest anyone think I'm advocating for actions against the law, stay within the parameters of the law, but use the levers of influence that the super PACs and the PACs use, and you just have to use them yourself. Although I have to say, if you can threaten their business interests by going to their customers and offering superior deals, superior financing terms, that kind of stuff I've found works too. You can get a change in behavior from that.
This has all been very, very informative. Pete, do you have any thoughts here before we get to these super chats?
I mean, I think one of the reasons why Jeff is able to do the things that he do is one, he's a very intelligent man, but two, he's got a burning hatred of these people.
Yes, I do.
And I don't think that most people understand exactly what these people are.
I think you're right.
And if you understand what these people are, blind hatred is not constructive. But being able to get that under control and to focus it and turn it into a power is something that I think most of the guys on our side haven't even considered yet.
That's interesting. I've never thought of that, Pete. And maybe that's something I need to think more about is how do we get our guys to achieve the kind of temperance that lets them channel aggressiveness in the right way?
It's very interesting because there's a whole core of a lot of points on the red pill sidebar from the original Manosphere guys about how anger is the male emotion. The default female emotion is to cry. Well, that's just always like the fallback that women go to. But the default emotion for men is always anger. Every single guy growing up these days has just, been taught since a young age, like, oh, anger is horrible. You're not allowed to use anger. It's terrible. It upsets the apple cart. It's always bad in all circumstances and all places. You just need to suppress it. You can never let it out, and don't ever do something like that. But no, actually, anger is an extremely useful tool for you to use if done constructively.
As much as I've studied the German regime from 1933 to 1945.
Right.
I think a lot of people believe that they were just these maniacs. The reason they were able to do the kind of things that they did on the Eastern Front at the beginning of Operation Barbarossa is just because they were these lunatics. No, I mean, they knew what happened in World War I. They knew why World War I happened. They knew what happened in Weimar. By that time, they had just become cold and focused.
Right.
It wasn't even hatred anymore. It was just destroy or be destroyed.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. This is so. I've never thought of this before. This is very interesting what Pete has brought up. The idea of temperance as the fundamental. One thing I have noticed. Young men have been through these crushing systems. They go through 12 years of primary schooling. And in every institutional battle with a woman or any disagreement at all, they always lose. They're always put second. They're taught to be subservient. They do that 4 years at university if they go to university, which I hope young men are not doing. And you just go, you at a certain point, you wonder if they're just beginning to despair rather than anger. They're experiencing despair. And that's the kind of thing I think Pete, you're talking about. They didn't have the Germans, even at the end of the operation, when they were being pushed back to Germany. I mean, there were periods of time when they were exacting 1 million casualties a mile on the Russians. Like, that's beyond belief. Skill and ferocity. They were not despairing people. They were people who were willing to fight to the end. Now, for me, I mean, they tried to kill my kid, and they're still trying to kill my kid. So obviously, I have that attitude. My kid deserves everything I have, and he's going to get it. But how do you get that same attitude in a young man who's been brought up to despair in a system that's crushed him all, and he sees very little opportunity, maybe even in the future? How do we counter that despair? I haven't thought about that. I'm going to think more about that, man. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Well, this has
I've
been
learned a lot from Pete. A lot. I have to say, over the last 5 years, I have learned more from Pete than almost anyone else I listened to.
I appreciate hearing that. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah,
That
I'm
means a lot
serious
to
too,
me.
man. I'm serious. I have a whole Obsidian folder full of stuff from your shows.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Pete is definitely one of our best. Everyone should be listening to the Pete Quinones show on all your podcast platforms. But, gentlemen, this has been an excellent discussion, something for the audience to think on, and the consequences of losing and siding with the GOP, and just thinking that they're actually in it for our interests. We all know better, which means it's not time to black pill or anything like that. It's actually, this could be your heroic mission as a man in this day and age, where most of our traditional avenues for heroic meaning have been lost to us. What could be more amazing than literally taking back your country? That's pretty amazing. So why don't we get through some of these super chats, gents, and we can call it a night.
All right.
We got Christopher Burke, some longtime super chatter, sends us $5 and a salute. He is a real American.
Real Americans.
Yes, thank you, sir. We got Solid Snake 1964. He did not get the first super chat in this week. Unacceptable, sir. You're slacking. He says, "Evening, gents. I've never been to Virginia proper, only right across the Potomac from DC to stay at a hotel in Virginia with the Pentagon in view. Would love to visit you gentlemen there someday. Hate to see the Old Dominion being ran by such a vile woman. Stay warm, all. Salute." Well, thank you very much, Solid Snake.
Real Americans.
Here we go. Here's another real American. We got Steve from Fox and Sons Coffee. Link in the description. He sends us $15 and a salute. He is a real American.
Real Americans.
Yes, thank you. Everyone head on over to Fox and Sons for all of your caffeine coffee needs for you coffee drinkers out there. Ski Bum 220, long time super chatter, sends us $100. Thank you very much, sir. You're the top super chatter of the night thus far. Thank you. He says, "Evening all. My dad was stationed in Norfolk for 3 years. It was and still is a beautiful state, and my sister lives in Virginia now. What a crime that the traitorous GOP was allowed to give a great state away to foreigners and spiteful mutants. We will win. We must win. Salute the OGC and all real Americans." Well, salute to you too, sir. Thank you.
Real Americans.
Yes, thank you. John Marmaduke sends us $5. He says, "Good evening." Well, good evening to you, sir. Chancey sends us $15. "It feels like I was hit with the whirlwind recently. Lots of activity going on. We're making progress, lads." We absolutely are making progress. Dude, the black pill is a suppository, gentlemen. Never forget that. Thomas Wayne Riley it sends us $15 from New Mexico. Thank you very much, sir. He says, "I'm running for U.S. Senate in New Mexico." Yes, he did make that announcement earlier this week. Everyone be sure to go and support him. After being asked to switch from running for Congress, I was offered quite a few resources to get on the ballot before February 3rd. I have been delivered nothing. Typical GOP, man. Not true. I've been called and asked to run for local stuff now. I decided I'm not spending thousands of dollars for this. Salute. Well, I wish you luck in all of your endeavors in the state of New Mexico, sir. Thank you very much.
Real Americans.
Yes, and Mr. Riley sends us another $5, and he says, I think I could have beat Dem too. It's very frustrating. Don't even look at the congressional district. One Republican I wanted to run against. Nim Dikama DP Upa Paruk. She will lose. Yeah, another Star Wars name. I'm sure. I feel for you, Mr. Riley. But good luck in whatever you decide to do in New Mexico in the future. The OGC stands behind you, sir. Zenrath sends us 125 bucks. Thank you very much, sir. He says, angry enough to ask a very direct question. Why in the hell is it when Dems run Virginia's AOC that the GOP decides to run a dead horse? They don't move effectively. They don't hire people willing to improve the country and constantly backstab each other. To any standing member of the GOP, why in the hell would anyone want to believe in you? Yeah, a very legitimate question. If this is the results we get, geez, you can only back like a dying horse so many times, man.
That's right.
TK sends us $10. Salute. The only problem with Jay Burton's prediction is that he's going to do a victory lap on the call for the next 3 to 4 years. Yes, that is true.
Real Americans.
Yes, and you, sir, are a real American. Burton's good friend. Kyle Linskog for $10 can only stay till 8:30 and pick back up around 9:30. If you're still here, I'll listen to the rest tomorrow. Salute. Well, thank you very much, sir. Moving on to TK again for $2 because NY isn't here. Oh, not me, not you is here. GOP Delonda EST. There we go.
Main focus
Yeah,
on the conservatives.
destroyed.
They need to go. They all need to go. Every single one of them.
Yes, indeed. Well done. Seasider sends us $10 and a salute as he does every week. Thank you, sir. You are a real American.
Real Americans.
Yes. Many use sushi for $10. The GOP is playing the next college debate while the Dems are playing to put their enemies in gulags. Be aware of it. No one is coming to save you. Act accordingly and stay safe out there. Yep. Very good. Very sound advice indeed.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. TK sends us $5 and says gay gif. Thank you. All right. Pinoid News for $20 says the Republicans and Democrats are really libertarians versus management. They both want GDP numbers go up. Minnesota is the best example, more corporations per capita than any other state. It's a one-party system. Everyone's looting the treasury. Many use sushi again for $10. Just a friendly reminder, when one is arguing with a leftist or a boomer, one is really arguing with the television. Yes, this is 100% true. I forget who coined this phrase. It might have been Black
Corey Mahler.
Oh, it was
Corey
Mahler. That's right. That's right. He did do this. That's right. And the television does not hear anything the viewer says. Yes, very, very true. 100%. Black Pill is the one who said the television was the Jew in the living room. That was Black Pill.
That was actually a priest, a Catholic priest in 1958.
Oh wow!
Wow.
Yeah.
Thomas Wayne Riley for $3 again. And as a Southern, it is. I love how he types even in his accent. The way he types. I love it. It is difficult to run as a Republican, but I want to see my state and this nation improve. Oh, I'm a good old rebel. That's just what I am. And for the Yankee Nation, I do not give a damn. Yeah. Well, New Mexico is one of those states I have to visit. One of the few states in the union I haven't been to yet. So I got to make my way down there one of these days. City Break Dancer Man, always a great name. Yes. The chirp, we know he's arrived. Sends us a salute. Thank you very much, sir.
Real Americans.
Bolero 393, an OG in these spaces for $5 says, there are gays in the GOP? No way. Tim Scott and Lindsey Graham are in the GOP?
Faggot.
Yeah. Imagine my lack of shekel for $15 says 50-50 chance of kicking Antifa guy in the balls and there being a target down there to hit.
That's right.
Very true. Very true. TK says $10. Gen Alpha is calling weed goy nip and you're black billing. Ha. The kids are alt right. Vulpes Persona for $10 sends us a salute. Thank you very much, sir.
Real Americans.
You, sir, are indeed a real American. A lot of super chats tonight, guys. Thank you very much. We greatly appreciate it. Moving on to No, I'm Not Grim from Red Hood. He sends us $5. I recommend anyone who's watching this after this stream is done, please listen to one of the more recent episodes, episode 1321 of the P. Quinones show. What episode was that, Pete? I don't know if you memorize them by the numbers.
Jay Burden and Stormy talking about the GOP Samson option.
Gotcha.
Ooh, all right. Yes. Everyone be sure to listen. I'm behind on all my consumption of podcasts and will be for the rest of tax season. So I'm going to be out of the loop for a while. It's just the nature of the things. But let's see. Pinoid News, again, for $5 says, unions. We need to start unions of millennials sooner and sooner, working men. Yeah. There's definitely something to be said about the old unions of old. And that's definitely a bit of propaganda that they always showed you towards our guys about like, oh, unions are just, against big business, against Democrats or whatever. It's just a way to propagandize you against collective organization and action.
Right.
It's not to say like all those guys, who were being backed by commies, back in the day or what have you, or were good or whatever. But collective organization is good and is something that we need to be doing more of.
Yeah.
Let's see. TK again. We're actually having like a bidding war going on in the super chats here. Responding to each other. It's like super chatception. He's responding to Pinoid News earlier. It says, "Is my boy as much of a WOP as he is?" Yeah. Yes. I'm not saying the. Yeah. You guys understand. Nice. Dawn Browning, the only female who listens to this show, sends us $10 Australian and a GIF of a lemon dancing with a couple maracas. Thank you, Dawn Browning. We look forward to your dancing GIFs every single week. Thank you. Son of Haster from up in the New Ivy League for $5 says, cheers, can't listen tonight, out with my chapter brothers, but I can still do my part. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate it. Pete Budapest for $5 says, Jeff, what are some of the pre-clearance, pre-vetting methods the GOP gatekeepers use to select people for positions of power?
So one of the most important things they look at is who gave you money. If the right people gave you money, you're probably okay to let in. They usually keep lists of people who are nationalists or conservative, or even in Texas we have a Texas nationalist movement, a separatist movement. If you take any money from any of those people, they'll keep you out. They also put you through a donor process. So for example, I went through TLR, which is the main liberal establishment PAC, put me through a series of interviews. And it really has nothing to do with your policy prescriptions. I realized looking back on it, because these were all done online and I took videos of them. What they were lengthy compliance tests to see if you would give in to what they said, if you're willing to change your opinions to what they were saying you should have your opinions to. They did 3 of these with me. They usually only do 1. They did 3 with me. And I didn't pass any of them apparently. So I didn't get any money from the establishment PACs. But they actually have behavioral screening like that. And that's because a lot of the donors are involved with the deep state, and they pick people based on psychological dispositions as much as they do for charisma.
All right. Well, there you go. Very, very interesting to say the least. All right. Moving right along here because they keep piling up. Paul Lunsford for $20 says, a sterling retelling of all you've went through and all you've done. We have much to learn and apply. Salute. Thank you very much, sir. Yeah. Mikey Machines for $50. Thank you very much. He sends us a salute. Praying for you, Mr. Jeff. I heard about your story some time ago. Just keep up the good fight. I live in a county led by complacent Republicans, and it has led to the ruin of my home state of California. Thank you, gents, for the show. Ugh.
I have a funny
Real Americans.
anecdote. I gave a speech to a group in California one time, and somebody brought in the Q&A, someone brought up some questions about, my views on homosexuality and so forth. And I said, well, basically, I think we should basically have the laws that Russia has. That if you engage in public acts, lewd homosexual acts in public, you should be imprisoned at hard labor or flogged. And the people in the Republican Party just couldn't. They weren't so much shocked as that they just couldn't process an like the idea that I wanted the public spaces to be PG. They had so imbibed so much from the left that they just couldn't process it. It was fascinating. There was it was like mass cognitive dissonance. I've never seen anything like it before, to the point where it shut down questions for like 120 seconds, like 2 minutes. Like they didn't know what to do. It was bizarre. So I totally get what's going on in California Republican circles.
And I think that complacent Republicans is at best an oxymoron. And at worst, I mean, they're just Republicans.
Yeah.
You don't really need to put a qualifier there.
Yeah.
Very good point. Yeah, much in the same way Jeff Deist has been talking about for some time about how the term libertarian just needs to be abandoned by anyone who's like actually serious and has something else. There really actually does need to be a term that differentiates, Republicans from actual right wingers. And it has to be a term that hasn't been given to us by our enemies. It has to be a term that we have for ourselves.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Paulie B, we're getting to the last couple ones right here, fellas. For $10 says salute the OGC and furthermore support the GOP. Delinda S. Yeah. There you go.
Main focus on the conservatives. They need to go. They all need to go. Every single one of them.
This is just too funny.
Every time.
That's always a good one. Sir Blank for $2 says, please don't delist this episode. Best ever. Yeah, it's a very good one. No, it's not going anywhere.
Thanks, guys.
All right. And then our final one for the night is from John Marmaduke again for $15. We are the generation born in the wilderness, waiting on the old folks to die before we can cross the Jordan. There's a lot of truth to that one, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. Well, old Vox Day, day of the pillow,
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Let's get our last bit of promotions out and then we'll get out of here. Pete, what do you have coming up, sir?
Just dropped part 2 with Carl Dahl and his friend Morger from Spain on just how a normal kind of lukewarm socialist got radicalized in Spain and became a fucking monster that needed to be defeated. So check it out.
I will do.
All right, everyone, be sure to check out the Pete Quinones show on all your podcast platforms. Mr. Jeff Younger, thank you for coming on tonight, sir. Anything to promote? Where can people find more of your stuff?
No, just look for me at Jeff Younger Show on YouTube, X, and Facebook. That's a joke, by the way. I actually took that handle because my life had become so public because of the lawsuits that I felt like I was in the Truman Show. And then one day somebody said, we ought to start a show. So I did.
Well, there you go. All righty. For myself, I'll just direct everybody to all of the OGC shows and our Substack. We got American Spirits on Monday, Chapter Houses on Wednesday, Pony Express Radio, of course, is here every Thursday. Check out the Substack where we got articles coming out every week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And everyone look at the OGC website, oldgloryclub.com, where you can find local chapters in your area that you guys can sign up for and join, form some bonds of brotherhood, just meet like-minded people. We got to get off the internet and into the real. Perhaps you guys can talk about some of the tactics discussed in this stream tonight at your next OGC meetings. I'm sure that'll be very fruitful. So, all right, we'll be back here next week. See you guys then.
When I pass on my good genes to my sons, they're going to join the Old Glory.